approach, or trying to tell that, well, guys, please, we have improved that over the years. I mean, all customers have been buying that, blacklisting technologies for years, and none of them feels secure, right? So Lumension, being quite small company as compared to all the McAfee, Symantec, Kaspersky's, right? We're always, over their shoulder, looking at customers who are not really satisfied with that blacklisting approach, and then eventually, with the help of our partners, we are able to, propagate this new approach, although it's again, or the new means of solving the same problem, just by a more effective means. So this is LEMSS, and I'm now about to guide you through the process of how it gets implemented and configured in the company's or customer's environment. So the installation file of LEMSS is about 300 megs. So you simply, download it, deploy it, use your serial number, and then the replication starts. It means the server gets all the required components from the cloud, and eventually within an hour you have the system ready to go. So eventually, the ultimate goal is to start managing the endpoints, right? So in the beginning, of course, everything will be here, quite empty. I also have just a virtual infrastructure here with one virtual server and agent running on it, right? But to get those endpoints, we built a discovery tool. So normally, once the server is installed, you go to discovery, tell system that, well, let's find our assets and install the agents. Sorry for some delays. It will take a few seconds until it loads. The virtual machine is quite slow here. So we can set up an immediate discovery, or we can say we'll do that on the weekly basis, let's say every Monday. So as long as you'll be plugging new computers into the network, we'll be able to discover them. There are several, means of discovering them, let's say by IP range. So let's just use the IP range here that your company has. You add that to scan, and you launch it. So every Monday, every week, we will be running this kind of a discovery process, which acts as a radar, in order to find new Windows XP machines or newer machines and install the agents, right? And here's the functionality that you would be automatically installing. Right here I have all the modules selected, right? So you click on next. Reboot would be required of the endpoints because the device control component is selected, and it operates on the core level of operating system, which prevents local administrators overriding it, right? So let's say we continue, you provide your credentials. Okay, let me put it administrator, admin, click on next, distribution proxy, and you finish this task, and it will start now finding your endpoints. Now, when the endpoint is discovered, in this case, agent will be deployed, and of course, our agent is just a single agent that is being used on the endpoint instead of, different components. So core of the agent is responsible for communication, right? We use port 80 and SSL for communication. You can limit just with an SSL if that's what you choose to do, right? But nonetheless, there is no mess. All components are integrated into a one single agent and one management console, which we normally use for managing everything, in terms of endpoint operations and endpoint security. So once you have it deployed, usually the first task every customer takes starts with patch management. The main goal of patch management is to reduce the attack surface of against any viruses or any tailored attacks. So in reality, once the patch remediation agent is deployed on the endpoint or a patch remediation component on the LEMSS agent, it starts inventorizing what your computers have. So it starts populating the data about the software that is being used in your infrastructure, about the operating systems, about hardware, and even services that are running on the endpoints. And that already starts giving you the information of what could be posing a risk to your company. So if we look at software, right? I'm not sure if you'd be happy to see Facebook messengers on your infrastructure, or iTunes could be, QuickTime, but every application which we should take into consideration adds additional attack vectors for hackers, because every application has its own vulnerabilities. So once then we review the inventory, we can jump into reviewing vulnerabilities. So unlike vulnerability scanner, which only provides the list of hundreds of vulnerabilities on the endpoints of the network resources, we do it differently. We actually show you patches that need to be deployed and vulnerabilities that these patches would fix. So, dependent on your technology, on your endpoints, you could take a look at just, let's say, vulnerabilities in my, let's say, sales department, right? And you get the information populated. I think I added my computer as illegal, right? So for now, I'm looking at all critical. Let us look at the most risky ones: critical, not superseded, detection status, not patched, and you would come up with how many?
Altså for det første, så jeg er hjemmesyg i dag, så jeg er måske ikke så klar i hovedet til at svare dig fornuftigt, men mit første bud ville være, har du installeret det med en lokal administrator på serveren? Altså en rigtig lokal, ikke en domæneadministrator, som er lokal, men en rigtig lokal. Okay, det plejer altid at være det der problem.
So you simply select all of them and go into the deployment wizard. So here you can see the technology that are being used. So in this case, I only have this one agent running on Windows 2008 R2 server.
Hvis det er formodentlig et spørgsmål om, at din application pool ikke er startet.
Next window.
Så
then Lumension
hvis du går ind på isen, så er der en SolarWinds application pool.
Software that we can deploy for select technologies. So let's say together with this implementation, I can perhaps implement a video VLC player. If I want Sun Java, I can deploy Sun Java to the environment. And there are several of hundreds of additional pieces of software or applications that you can deploy. Then you have to accept the terms and conditions on behalf of your end users, in order not to poke them about some EU agreements. You put the name. You can define the deployment time. So if you're patching your servers, most probably you run a one-time deployment. But if you're patching your desktops, most probably you start to repeat, let's say, the process, let's say, 2, 3, 4 times until all your desktops and laptops are deployed. Because if you just run a one-time deployment, it may happen that your endpoints would be offline at that time, or somebody would be traveling with those desktops or laptops, and you won't be able to patch them according to the schedule. So again, you go further, and here's where some of our patents work. So we're chaining all the packages, and we're suspending a reboot, which normally would be required after significant changes to the system until the very end. And even right here, I mean, if you want, we can configure some additional settings and
suppress
a chain reboot if we don't really want to get the system rebooted after the number of these installations, right? So every package has also some additional features and functions that, dependent on the type of the package, you can modify. So if you install a patch and something ain't working, right, perhaps, you could, try and uninstall it and see if that, resolves the problem. Of course, an installation option is not available for all the packages. Imagine you're, patching your SQL database, right? There's no way without the backups that you'd be able to, undo the changes that you made by installing the patch, right? So, you can simply review that and, click on next. You would then set up the notification settings and tell, well, should we, bother a user with notifying about deployment, or we should suppress that and only notify the user when he or she needs to reboot the computer, right? With, the text, do we allow to cancel this deployment, this reboot, or allow users to snooze it, right? It all depends. So, click on next, and you don't really have to, think yourself of which patch needs to be installed first, which patch needs to be installed, second, right? We do all this kind of chaining, so all packages will get downloaded to your server, and the deployment will start after, right? Chaining all those packages and installing them in the sequence that is right for a specific system. So bear in mind that all these packages we get from vendors directly, right? We test them in our own laboratory, right, or our environment. As long as we see that they're definitely, fixing vulnerabilities, we're packaging them and giving to our customers to use. And they can either then patch, their Windows operating systems, their third-party applications that we support. There is an extensive list of that content that we provide out of the box that no other product on the market has. And bear in mind that Lumension is quite a brand new name for us. We've been known as a company called PatchLink for more than 20 years, and still, many customers, especially in the United States, are still calling us a PatchLink vendor, right? So it's not only vulnerability content that we provide. I mean, we do have, updates for service packs, installers, updates. We also have, a policy or system, system management settings that, you could deploy. Let's say you want to, disable something, disable USB storage devices, or disable, print screen. There are a lot of settings that you can deploy as packages and get those applied on your endpoints. So in reality, a lot comes out of the box, right, which you can just, jump and start patching your systems. Again, if you're familiar with, some competing technologies, you would understand, how easy it is really to do the patch management with Lumension without really the huge need of, professional service to set up something. It's really out of the box. Nonetheless, there are always customers that tell us, look, we use a specific piece of software, custom or tailored applications that you don't support. So how can we patch those, right? So what comes out of the box, you can actually modify or add additional content using Lumension Content Wizard. So Lumension Content Wizard is like a small component to our Patch Remediation offering, which allows you, let's say, to modify the existing content. So let's say, okay, Adobe Reader, let me just modify this patch. So every package in the system has the same structure. There is a fingerprint, how we're recognizing that this patch is deployed. There is a package itself. It could be an executable, it could be a script, and also there are prerequisites that need to be present in order for the specific installation to run, right? So you can play also with the existing patches. Nonetheless, we have 5 wizards built into a content wizard product. So usually companies are using a new patch wizard, which allows you to use different types of creating a new package. So you can simply, let's say, browse for an MSI file. Imagine that it could be a Google Chrome Enterprise Edition that you all of a sudden decided to implement across your infrastructure. Again, now what we do, we like disassemble the MSI package, right, and we will create a package out of it available for deployment. So again, there is a 64-bit version and the regular 32-bit version, right, with all the content, all the scripts that are being executed in order to get that deployment installed. So once you click on save, this new patch, which you can define yourself, create again new from the scratch with customized scripts, with customized executables, files, and folders, you would save that as a package that will appear in your patch remediation component, and you would be simply deploying that across your enterprise. Now, the second interesting tool is called Uninstall Wizard, right? So let me just demonstrate you how that works. So imagine that you went to your inventory and you're not really happy about seeing something like, well, Skype, or I don't know, VLC media player, or some kind of Facebook Messenger in your infrastructure. So LEMSS does allow you to see that these software or unwanted software is present on these endpoints. Again, you don't really have to log into every endpoint and uninstall that from them. So let's imagine you have this Facebook Messenger installed on LEMSS and perhaps 20 of other machines. So again, you get back to Content Wizard, launch and install wizard, and do a remote session with LEMSS 7. Yep, and you would see here, okay, so I have this endpoint with these pieces of software installed. So let me take a Facebook Messenger and create an uninstallation package, right? So what we do, we actually extract the configuration of this Facebook Messenger from the endpoint and create a package, which you then eventually save. And once you get back to your software, and patch management interface, you can look for the name.
Hvad er det, der er galt? Hvor fanden er nu den hoppet af internetforbindelsen her igen? Det var da sindssygt irriterende.
Tror du også, at du kommer til at bruge de der, man putter ned i poser, sådan her, de der? Nej, jeg synes, de der vandet ud.
Godt, hvis vi kan sørge for den næste kaffe.
Ja, det har jeg med vand. Og ikke bare sådan en masse sammen.
Hej, skal.
Det kan jeg prøve til.
Deploy that across your enterprise. And two additional things to add, for patch management option is the ability to tailor how the system works for, let's say, distributed environment. So if you have, let's say, remote offices, perhaps you would want to modify the so-called hours of operation and tell that, well, our computers are quite weak, so we can't really do anything active, during the working week, but we rather do it on Sundays, at specific windows, or perhaps, we can do it also on Tuesday at night. And that would mean that for specific groups of the endpoints, this would be like a schedule on when the agent can really perform active tasks and when it should not. So that can be tailored for any different sets of the endpoints, right? And to some extent, some customers really heavily rely on so-called mandatory baselining, which you do for your groups. So we're grouping all the endpoints into system groups. That is done automatically, or you can manually group your systems based on whatever criteria you choose. Your department, different locations, right? And then you set up a so-called mandatory baseline. So imagine you still have here Windows XP or Windows 7 servers, and you want to make sure that each machine of the specific technology would be adequately patched. So in this case, you would filter all the available content based on the technology or operating system, or different operating systems, and you would add those, let's say, patches, packages that need to be installed mandatorily for those systems. So if you decide to add them, right, this piece of software would always be installed on the specific, in this case, technology like Windows 2008 server. So here's how it starts working. The discovery component would automatically map your network or discover your assets and install agents. When an agent is installed, it's no longer just an asset. It's the endpoint that you manage. The agent of Patch Remediation would populate your inventory information, and based on the inventory information, you'll start seeing the vulnerabilities that need to be deployed in order, packages that need to be deployed that would fix those vulnerabilities, right? And based on the inventory information, endpoints get automatically assigned to a system groups. So as long as you have mandatory baselines set up for these groups, the implementation of these packages would start being implemented, again, based on the agent policy sets for different organizations, based on the hours of operation that you choose to set. So this work really helps you to implement the most practical approach to information security and really reduce the surface of possible attacks. Now, of course, you can't really deploy all the patches in the system, so eventually you'll find yourself that there are still vulnerabilities in the network, right? So although the risk is significantly reduced, but there is still a chance. And here's where our application control adds a second layer of practice protection, right? So once you have an application control agent deployed on the systems, you would normally go to your policies and set up a so-called easy auditor policy. In this case, I'm using it for all departments, but there can be different policies defined, for different, let's say, organizational units in your company. And you just click on Edit, same as Create New. And what I'm telling right now, the application control component, that I want to log non-authorized applications as well as authorized applications, just for the sake of reporting. Perhaps you don't want to log authorized applications. Perhaps you do, right? Yep, and then you assign the department or Active Directory organizational units, which you want this policy deployed, and the agent will start auditing all executables on the endpoint and all attempts of launching these executables. So in reality, we start with auditing and understanding what we have in our infrastructure. And just within, 1 or 2 hours, right, or overnight in a big company, you'd be able to start analyzing the applications that are being executed on your network, right? So you can schedule logs which would show you, let's say, in this case, it's all application events over a specific number of times or for a specific department, right? As the implementation reality usually starts, one department after another department. So we have a number here of, denied applications or allowed applications. And from that log, what you can do is actually check the executable file. By the way, in the new version, we won't be really showing the DLLs unless the customer would want to see that. So it would be only executables, right? And you make the decision. So if you know that this specific application executed, let's say in the legal department, or how many they would have, a document management system, perhaps some kind of a database of laws or registries, something like that, and you would say you would like to authorize it, you would want to deny it, or if it's a process that you trust, let's say it's a Microsoft WSUS or like Microsoft SMS or any other deployment software which you trust. So that means that this executable would be acting as a trusted process to make further changes within the system. And once you made a decision, you would add that application to the library, just for the sake of having those records. As you can see, I'm not allowed to add it and have a duplicate because it's already in the system. So just within, a day or even the matter of hours, right, after reviewing your logs and adding the applications, right, you would have your application library populated with the pieces of software. And eventually it comes to a question, what is easier, to implement the technology that helps you or lies you that it will protect you against 6 million malware signatures per month, the new one, or it's easier actually for the company to describe or set a very limited number of applications, be it 20, 30, or 40, which would be allowed to execute, and you would be blocking everything else. So as you can see here, I have a lot of stuff here, like uTorrent, right, Apple software updaters, right. I can group those applications, according to a different, criteria, right. I can also have a denied application policy, but eventually, again, denying is all about blacklisting, right? So you're blacklisting a specific, version of the software, specific hash, right? And, it would prevent that from running. But, if an update comes, you would again be facing with a new hash. So it's not really the way of blocking something. And that's what we have been telling the market for many years. It's all about the whitelisting. So once you are certain that your computers are running only legitimate software, you have a chance to remove the unwanted software using the patch remediation component, right? So then you simply get back to your application control policies and you modify that auditing policy to an easy lockdown, as we call it. So you convert that auditing policy to a lockdown. And once you do that, right, you click on next. Again, you have your department set. So when you convert that, all the applications that are approved, that are on the systems, they would still continue, or users would be still allowed to execute that. But anything new, all known viruses, all unknown viruses, and all unwanted applications, they would simply be killed upon execution. They won't be able to execute. So that is the second layer of protection, going into a lockdown where only legitimate applications are allowed. Nonetheless, it's not only about the lockdown. You can go into lockdown with, I don't know, every modern operating system most probably. It's just a question of how you manage that lockdown over time, right? So you go into lockdown, next day Microsoft is releasing a new update for your Internet Explorer. Your vendor of your banking system is releasing a new version which adds new cool, functions to your product. How do you introduce that change? And here's where our trusted change mechanism comes into play. So our patch and remediation product always acts as a trusted source for introducing the changes and updates into the system. But you can add more. Let's say, well, if you have a specific updater for, I don't know, WinZip, Adobe, or, Apple that you want to run independently, right? You simply create a new updater policy, right? You select a file, which, we would treat as a trusted process, right? We would, hash it and check that it's always, the same, right? And it would be used as a trust updater. You can also use trusted publisher. It's not really something we recommend too much, right? Where you extract a digital signature or digital certificate from the product, right? And you use that digital certificate as a trusted source. So everything that comes signed with that certificate would be allowed to update your whitelist. Or you can use a local authorization. So let's say I'm giving my local authorization for my administrators, right? I would still, require some level of logging, go next, and I would say that, well, specific Active Directory users or let's say administrators on the computers would still be able to authorize the execution of a non-authorized software. So what does it mean? In some cases, we would not allow that. But in some cases, we say, well, certain users can make that exception. So once a user launches an unauthorized applications, which, your administrator hasn't authorized, he'll get a nice pop-up telling, well, Mr. User, you're now trying to execute the application that hasn't been approved by our information security policy. Given you accept the risk and all consequences of this execution, you may proceed by clicking OK. So a regular user or even the CEO of the company would think twice before executing something that has, a potential to jeopardize the security of the company. Right. And, another third cool feature that we added about a year ago when we acquired the leading company called CoreTrace on the market of memory protection, we implemented that straight away in the product. It may happen in some cases that a legitimate application would be hacked using, I don't know, zero-day exploits, or, somebody would exploit a zero-day vulnerability with a, I don't know, buffer, heap overflow attack, right? And it will not only try to use an authorized application for for facilitating that execution, but it may actually use a reflective memory attacks and try to launch some rogue process without really using any operating system commands, right, or processes. So with these reflective memory attacks, we again don't use signatures, right? We do behavior analysis, and again, what effect it gave us, on this marketplace. So let me just try and find one report. I think again it's a third-party benchmarking, which benchmarked a number of solutions, and I just want to show you the power of Lumension in terms of protection against zero-day attacks. Apology for this. So as you can see here, 32 example executables of zero-day malware, was thrown into Lumension, and 100% was blocked, as compared to a rather pathetic numbers of our major competition. So that really gives a different level of memory protection for customers that use Lumension. So that really, to some extent, concludes my presentation about application control. As you see, it's rather easy, right? Once you have your logs, you can easily approve, deny, or trust your applications in the system, right? You get your application library populated, right? You can manage your trusted change, and you can enable the memory protection to be quite secured from the zero-day attacks. So that's how it works. And when that happens, there is no need for the antivirus as the level as the front defense option. So, Patch Manager would reduce the surface of possible attacks. Application control would prevent the unwanted software, viruses, malware, unknown malware from being able to execute, right? So the third layer of protection is called the device control. Now, device control is a very classical approach to guarding your, like a perimeter of your endpoint, right? So let's say all the ports that you have, right, we can control. And bear in mind that, this technology in the beginning, it's still mostly very, very, very widely used by governments, by, let's say, secret services, by military companies, because we have it patented, right, with something that really make the software, unkillable, even using the administrator rights. So we do penetrate the operating system so deeply that admins cannot really overcome, and we allow the control of all the classes of devices in a very granular way. So if you go just one example as a removable storage, right? So we can have different settings if the endpoint is online, so it means that it's connected to the network. If the endpoint is offline, you can have a different policy. You can have a scheduled policy, so that you could tell that, well, if my computers during working hours have one policy, and after hours they have different policy, right? You can also use shadowing and daily copy limits. So let's say I would only allow users to copy 10 megabytes of data to external media per day, right? So the first policy, I would say, I would be blocking all access to my removable, in this case, storage, if it's unencrypted, right? So if you plug, any USB key or any iPhone that you brought to your home, or it's not really corporate, Lumension would not allow to copy or paste anything to that media. You get a pop-up telling that, well, user, the media is encrypted. Do you want to encrypt it? So if you decide to encrypt it, that's fine. The main goal is, if this media is lost, to make sure that it's not really recoverable by any strangers. And then if it's encrypted, well, you'd say that I would allow reading, writing, file filtering, encrypting, decrypting, information from that media. You could also tell that we would only allow Office and Adobe documents to be copied, so you don't have other executables being copied on the external media. Again, it's about whitelisting. we are not really blocking anything. We're just allowing specific stuff to be copied. So even if the user thinks that he's smart enough, he can, change the executable into doc, right? It won't work because we would check the header of the file. And, well, I can't imagine the user knowing hex code that much that they could, change the header, then copy the file, and then unchange the header, and that make that file still work. So, it's almost impossible. So again, shadowing settings. So if we're reading any data from the media, perhaps you would decide that you only want to log the file names that are being copied. But when you're writing something into external media, you would want a full file content. So literally you'd have a shadow copies of everything that is being copied on and from the endpoint, again, if you choose so. And then in the end you set up, okay, what policy should be used, what this policy should be used for which users. So in the end, you would define for everyone specific users from the active, directory or on all endpoints. It's really up to you. So literally, there is not much that to tell about the device control. I think we have around 300 competitors in this marketplace, but nobody is able to beat us in terms of security and functionality. And bear in mind that this component is FIPS 142 level 2 certified, which makes it into the shortlist for all the NATO organizations. So we literally have governments or even countries that use this Lumension device control component across their ministries of defense, prisons, ministries of interiors, secret services, even intelligence and counterintelligence services we have as customers. And the last feature, most probably, which I will show you, and then spend just 1 or 2 minutes on the last component we have, which is the antivirus, right? Again, from the device control perspective, we do have a challenge and response mechanism built into the tool. So whenever, let's say a Secret Service agent is in the enemy territory, and for some reason he needs access, which normally his notebook wouldn't allow that, he can request that the temporary exception to the policy even being offline. So he would call support, say, guys, I'm in the middle of, war in Crimea, right? And I need now to have, ability to read, write, to copy the enemy plans or whatever here. And, he would get this client key. Now, on the other line of the phone, or other side of the phone line, the LEMSS administrator would read that code. He would ask for the code, and he would go into another let's say screen. He would configure what is required to let the endpoint enter the client key and provide back to the user in the field with the unlock code, and he will get an exception. So this feature is very widely used in usually the companies that rely on device control, because it allows us to keep our policies clean, neat, or tidy, right, and manage only temporal exceptions. And if we're allowing that user to, let's say, do something more than the regular user, everything would still be logged and shadow copied. So if the user, ever gets online, right, we will, get that information. Otherwise, information would be encrypted on the media, and in case, the notebook is lost or the media is lost, right, we still have proof that everything was encrypted and in accordance with our policies. Okay, and to complete this live demo, funny thing, but we do have antivirus into the system. Only the main difference is that it's only the last means or the least needed product in this defense and depth approach that we have been pursuing for years. So imagine the situation. We're not really reliant on the blacklisting technology. right? Once you start doing the good housekeeping with patch management, inventory management, you remove unwanted software from the endpoints, and you reduce the surface of possible attacks. Then you implement application control, which would prevent any viruses from running, well, unless the administrator is stupid enough to authorize them, right? You still need to have the technology that would recognize eventually that virus is in the system, right? Although it would not be able to do anything, but you still need to have a lady, right, that would clean your hotel after a week. So that's where the place of antivirus is in Lumension, right? So normally we do have real-time scanning. We do have the so-called sandboxing and stuff. I mean, we OEM this solution from a Scandinavian vendor called Norman. I mean, they have all these certificates, these nice marketing phrases that every other antivirus solution on the market has, right? It's as powerful as every other antivirus on the market, but in our case, right, it's still a cleaning tool, right? Viruses that could be on the system, right, they would not execute, but you would still need to have a signature to clean them. So even if you have an infected system, right, what would you do, right? Viruses don't really operate on their own, right? They do try and download something, get another DLL, get another Visual Basic script to compile some new executable to allow access for a malicious user, right? It can still remain in the system, right, until the given time, right, with no harm done. And when the time comes, the antivirus vendor eventually develops a signature, and the virus is recognized. We would simply clean it from the system in order to remove some or get some more space on the hard drives, and make sure that the computer, if some infected file is copied onto another computer, that it doesn't really infect the endpoint that doesn't really have an application control or the whitelisting technology installed. So there are, of course, a lot more features and functions like Wake on LAN feature. We do have a built installation manager, so when a new version of the software comes, you don't really have to go through 1,000 pages of upgrading the piece of software into another version. Everything is built in, so we're planning to release now version 8 of LEMSS somewhere in May. And on top of this functionality and some improvements, we're adding a mobile device management solution that again will use the same management console, and would allow let's say a quite general or basic level of control for the endpoints of our customers. And again, now new customers of LEMSS Enterprise option that includes all modules will get MDM free of charge without not a single penny of additional investment required. So this installation manager is meant for always keeping the system up to date. Yep, and once you look at the endpoints, I mean, you can drill down, drill in, everything is interconnected, and it really works as a single and integrated management console for managing, operations and really managing the security of your endpoints. So I think that concludes my live demonstration of the product. Right. Bear in mind, last thing, most probably to tell that there are different roles that you can set up in the system. So based on who is the administrator, who is the user of LEMSS, security professional, chief information security officer, admin, of the system, all the interface can be tailored based on roles and segregated based on the duties the customer employees have, right? And every piece of, let's say, widgets, interface, you can move, edit, update, click, and get onto what information you need. So that concludes my live demo. I would thank you all for coming. Now, if you have any questions, please, feel free to post them on the Q&A window or on the chat window. I'll still be here in line for 5 to 10 minutes, depending on if there are any questions, and we'll answer them if there is a need. Right. So Mikhail said, yep, it was very clear. So thank you for that. Bear in mind now that, as I think I mostly have here, partners and resellers from across the region, and there are people, getting themselves also familiarized with Lumension. The link that I shared with you for this, these weekly webinars, it's permanent. So feel free to put that link onto your website. I will be repetitively doing these webinars every 2 weeks. So whenever you feel that, customer might also be interested in learning how our solution works, as you may not be still, let's say, not have, enough technical skills to run the demonstration, please feel free to invite them into these bi-weekly webinars. And after every webinar, you'll see a pop-up window asking you to, answer some questions. So, in case you are a customer today here as well, and if you would like to receive an evaluation version of LEMSS, bear in mind that you will get contacted by one of our sales engineers that would help you, lead the implementation of LEMSS in your company. Yeah. So Agnes asked the question. So if we have in whitelist, an example, Java executable and user updated Java, this program will not work until we add it to the whitelist. Well, normally, Java has an update itself. So as long user would not be able to update that if the computer is in the lockdown mode. But if you would allow a Java updater as a trusted process, then it would, it would allow this process to allow this process to add the changes into the whitelist automatically. So Agnes, does that answer the question? Right. So bear in mind that every executable we could treat as executable that we could allow or deny, and we could treat that also as a trusted updater or a trusted publisher, allowing